Hey guys, tonight we head somewhere so cold, so raw, so fiercely alive, you can practically feel your eyelashes freezing just thinking about it. You're stepping into the 1970s, into Alaska, before the tourists, before the Instagram posts about off-grid living. You're about to feel what it's like to bet everything, your family, your sanity, your breath in the idea that wilderness can fix what the world broke. And, spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this one without a good blanket and maybe a mug of something warm. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You arrive in Alaska with the Albrights, a family, clutching their second, third, maybe 10th chance at happiness. It's 1974, the year after the oil crisis, when America feels jittery and restless. People dream of simpler lives, of getting away from noise and neon. You're in their shoes now, or rather, their half-frozen boots, stepping off a small plane in Homer, Alaska, as a gust of wind punches you in the chest like an uninvited bouncer. The smell is sharp salt and diesel, and something clean, too, like the promise of danger. Cora Albright's smile trembles in the cold, her hands wrapped around her husband Ernst's arm like she's holding on to a promise she still believes in. He's tall, lean, a Vietnam vet with the kind of eyes that flick too quickly from horizon to shadow. His smile says, "We're free now." His silence says, "I'm still not sure what that means." Their daughter, Lenny 13, awkward, bookish, stares at the endless sky, a blue so wide it makes her feel both tiny and infinite. You can feel her heartbeat in your own chest as she thinks, maybe this is where we finally belong. They've inherited land up near Connect, a speck of a settlement somewhere between a map and a myth. The locals call it the Great Alone, which sounds poetic until you realize they mean it literally. The nearest neighbor might be miles away. The nearest hospital, let's not talk about it. You bounce along a muddy road in an old truck that coughs like a lifelong smoker. Ernst grinning at every bump like it's proof the world hasn't beaten him yet. He's done with jobs, bosses, rules. Out here, he says, we make our own life. And for a fleeting second, the dream feels real. You reach the cabin, or what's left of it. A sagging roof, walls that look like they're apologizing for existing, windows patched with plastic. It's perfect, Ernst insists, eyes wild with that post-war hunger for control. You can almost believe him until you realize there's no electricity, no plumbing, and not much insulation besides hope. The forest looms close, every spruce and birch whispering secrets you can't quite hear. There's a stillness here that hums louder than any city street. Historians still argue whether Alaska's isolation has shaped a unique frontier psychology, a mix of defiance, paranoia, and awe. But as you stand there, feeling the cold creep through your socks, you think maybe it's just what happens when humans stare too long into endlessness. That night, under a sky thick with stars, you huddle beside the Albrights around a flickering oil lamp. Ernst talks about self-reliance, about taming nature, while Cora watches him with that kind of devotion that feels both beautiful and dangerous. Lenny listens, half believing, half doubting, tracing constellations on the ceiling with her eyes. You can smell the damp wood, the sour temps of kerosene, the faint iron scent of snow waiting in the dark. Somewhere outside, a wolf howls long, hollow, almost mournful. It echoes inside your ribs. The quirky fact of the night. In the 1970s, Alaska really did attract a surge of off-grid dreamers, hippies, veterans, romantic soul, chasing the fantasy of untouched freedom. Some brought goats and solar panels. Others brought typewriters and whiskey. One guy famously tried to build an entire homestead out of driftwood and optimism. Spoiler, the optimism didn't last through the first winter. Cora clutches Lenny's hand as the wind rattles the walls. Ernst's voice grows softer, darker. He talks about how society betrayed men like him, how the war broke something the world refuses to see. You feel the tension rise like frostbite, spreading quiet, numbing, invisible until it's too late. Still, there's a moment when Lenny steps outside, boots sinking into new snow, and the sky opens like a curtain. The northern lights ripple above green, violet, ghostly white. You tilt your head back with her breath catching. It's so silent you can hear your own pulse. You could swear the lights move in rhythm to it. And just like that, you understand why people stay. Not for comfort, not even for peace, but for this trembling, sacred reminder that the world can still astonish you. Lenny whispers to herself, "This is home." You feel the words settle deep in your bones, heavy and uncertain. As you head back to the cabin, the air sharper now, you catch sight of a pair of eyes reflecting from the tree line. Maybe it's a moose, maybe it's something else. Out here, myth and reality walk the same snow-covered paths. By morning, the fire's gone out. The cabin is colder than the air outside. Ernst's already chopping wood, sweat freezing on his brow. "We'll make it work," he says again, voice hoarse, as if repetition could turn belief into fact. You can almost hear Alaska chuckle under its breath. It's seen dreamers like you before. It's buried some of them. You wake to the sound of an axe striking wood, a dull rhythmic thunk that syncs with the pulse in your ears. The morning light slides through cracks in the log walls like blades of silver, cutting the cold air into shimmering pieces. You pull on stiff boots and step outside, where Ernst is already hard at work. The breath from his mouth drifting up in little ghosts. He doesn't notice you at first. He's chopping like a man trying to keep something buried beneath every swing. You can almost feel his mind counting. One for the war, one for the nightmares, one for the men who didn't come home. The cabin stands awkwardly on uneven ground, more skeleton than shelter. You spend the morning hammering nails into stubborn logs, your fingers aching, the metal biting colder than steel should be allowed to. Ernst mutters instructions like prayers. "Keep the seams tight, Lenny. Wind gets in through everything that isn't perfect." By noon, your breath forms clouds you could almost sculpt. The temperature hovers below freezing, even though the sun still rides high. Cora's face is red from scrubbing soot off the iron stove she's coaxing into life. It takes a terrifying amount of firewood just to keep the chill at bay. The wilderness around you seems infinite trees, rising like cathedral columns, a hush so complete it humbles every human sound. The only thing louder than the cold is your own heartbeat. That's when you meet the neighbors, or rather, they meet you. Large Marge, the postmistress/general store owner, shows up on a snowmobile with a grin that could cut through fog. "You, the new dreamers," she shouts over the engine. "Better start stockpiling. First winter's a killer." Her tone is cheerful, but her eyes are the color of hard experience. She drops off a crate of canned goods, a warning about bears, and a loaf of homemade bread that tastes like heaven even though it's half stale. You'll need to learn to smoke fish, keep chickens, maybe even trap. The land gives what it wants, not what you ask for. As she roars away, Cora calls out a too bright thank you, and you feel the gap between her politeness and her fear. It's wide enough to swallow a family whole. By evening, the cabin smells faintly of pine pitch and wet wool. Ernst sketches plans on a yellow pad, fences, snares, a smokehouse, his handwriting shaky, almost feverish. We'll be self-sufficient by spring, he says. We'll show them all. You're not sure who them is, but his voice has that brittle edge that makes you want to nod and stay quiet. Cora kisses his shoulder. We can do anything, she whispers, like she's afraid of waking a bear inside him. Lenny watches, unsure whether to feel inspired or scared. You step outside to gather more wood. The snow's falling softly now, slow and fat, each flake catching the dim light like a secret. Somewhere deep in the trees, something moves, a fox, maybe, or the idea of one. You pause, letting the sound of the axe fade behind you. The air tastes pure, sharp as mint. This is the Alaska people dream about, the kind you see on postcards and think, I could live there. You almost forget that living there means surviving there. Historians still argue whether the surge of 1970s homesteaders helped preserve Alaska's wild spirit, or simply romanticized hardship beyond reason. What's certain is that most of them underestimated the loneliness. The quirky tidbit of the day: one man near Tokitna tried to use old car tires as insulation, claiming it kept the bears away. It didn't. It just made his cabin smell like hot rubber and despair. The Albrights work until their muscles scream. Cora hums an old love song under her breath, the kind that sounds sad even when it's supposed to be happy. Lenny learns to swing an axe, her hands blistering but steady. You can feel her small triumph each time the blade bites clean through a log. At night, the stove clanks and pops as it cools. The wind slips through the chinks in the wall, whispering secrets you don't want to hear. Ernst sits by the window, cigarette glowing faintly. They think I can't do it, he mutters. They think I'm broken. You want to tell him no one's thinking about him at all. That the wilderness doesn't care whether he's broken or brilliant. Title, treat him the same either way. But you stay silent, just like Lenny. Later, when Cora and Ernst crawl into their narrow bed, you hear them laughs, soft, weary, human. It's the first time since arriving that the sound doesn't feel forced. You smile in the dark, clutching your blanket tight, pretending the cabin is a fortress instead of a splintered dream. Morning comes again, pale and relentless. You join Cora at the river to haul water, your boots sinking through crusted snow. The river is half frozen, its surface cracked like glass. She teaches you to scoop carefully, not to fall in, because the water doesn't forgive mistakes. You both look up at the mountains, jagged against the pale sky. It's beautiful, Lenny whispers. Cora nods, eyes glassy. It'll kill you if you let it. By mid-afternoon, the light fades early, winter's arriving faster than anyone expected. Ernst grows restless, pacing, muttering about government lies, about city people who don't know what real life means. His laughter comes to suddenly now, like sparks from dry tinder. You notice how Cora flinches each time his tone shifts, how she rushes to soothe him with gentle words that sound more like apologies. You wish you could tell her that love doesn't have to mean walking on ice so thin it sings beneath your feet. That night, you dream of wolves circling the cabin, their eyes gold in the dark. When you wake, your heartbeat is loud enough to scare the silence. You listen for movement, but the only sound is the creak of wood under wind. And then faint, almost imagined you hear laughter again, not from inside. From far away, in the trees, it echoes once, then fades. Maybe it's a trick of air currents, maybe a snow-covered memory of something older than you. Either way, the sound leaves you uneasy. By the time dawn spills gray over the valley, frost clings to every nail, every window edge. The cabin stands proud but trembling, just like the people inside it. You realize that here, survival isn't measured in comfort, it's measured in persistence. Somewhere deep in your bones, you start to understand why people call this place the Great Alone. Not because it's empty, but because it demands you face every part of yourself you've been avoiding. And out here, there's nowhere to hide. You wake before dawn, the cold pressing down like a second blanket that forgot how to comfort. The stove's gone out again, and your breath clouds the air in lazy ghosts. You can hear Cora moving softly in the dark, her hands already numb as she strikes a match. The flame sputters, catches, and slowly the orange glow creeps up the log walls, revealing frost feathering the window panes like delicate white lace. Outside, the world has gone completely still. Snow covers everything, the axe handle, the woodpile, even the path to the outhouse that you now eye with deep spiritual dread. The silence is so complete that when the stove finally pops, you jump. Welcome to your first Alaskan winter. Lenny rubs her eyes, curls of breath drifting from her lips. It's beautiful, she whispers, but her teeth chatter mid-sentence. Cora forces a smile. Beautiful, yes. Deadly, too. Like most things, worth loving. You think she's talking about the weather. She isn't. Ernst comes in from checking the traps, his beard crusted with ice. He smells of smoke and sweat and the strange iron scent of frozen air. 3 rabbits, he says proudly, slapping them down on the table. They're stiff, their fur shimmering with frost. He's grinning like he's brought home gold. You help Cora skin them, trying not to wince as your fingers cramp from the cold. She works quickly, gracefully, as if she's done this all her life. My mom used to say you can learn anything if you stop thinking you're too good for it, she says quietly. You wonder what her mother would think of her now living on the edge of nowhere, clinging to hope like it's a rationed supply. As the day crawls forward, the snow thickens, blurring the world into a white you can almost taste. The sun barely lifts itself over the mountains before collapsing again into the horizon. Light feels like a rumor. By mid-afternoon, it's already dusk. Ernst chops wood obsessively, as if each swing keeps something darker at bay. Lenny stacks the pieces neatly, hands red and raw. We'll need more, he mutters. Always more. You can hear the storm building before it hits the low moan of wind, winding through the trees like a warning. By nightfall, the cabin shakes. The roof groans under the weight of snow. Cora nails a blanket over the door to keep out drafts, but the cold slips in anyway, sneaky as regret. You sit by the fire, watching the flames dance. Lenny tries to read Jack London, her voice soft. The proper function of man is to live, not to exist, she quotes. Ernst snorts. Jack London never saw real cold, he says, though everyone knows he did. Historians still argue whether London's frontier stories glorified suffering or simply recorded it with brutal honesty. But, as you listen to the storm clawing at the windows, you decide it doesn't matter. Anyone who's faced this kind of cold knows the line between truth and myth blurs fast. The quirky fact of the night. Some Alaskans in the 1970s would line their cabin walls with tin foil to reflect heat from stoves. It worked sort of, but also made their homes look like conspiracy bunkers. Lenny suggests doing it here. Ernst glares. We're not fools. You're not sure that's true anymore. As the wind screams, Ernst grows restless, pacing like a caged wolf. You hear that? He says suddenly. They don't want us here. You glance at Cora. She doesn't ask who they are. She just lowers her gaze, jaw tight. The storm lasts 3 days. You lose track of time, counting only the number of times you have to break ice in the water bucket or shake snow off the roof. The radio sputters once, then dies. There's no one to call for help, even if there were help to call. Lenny tries to make it an adventure. She builds a little fort out of blankets, hangs flashlights from the rafters, pretends it's a cozy cave. You admire her imagination, even as your own spirits sag under the weight of endless white. On the second night, Ernst slams his fist against the wall because the fire won't stay lit. This land wants to beat me, he growls, but I won't let it. His voice cracks somewhere between fury and fear. Cora touches his arm gently. We're all tired, baby. He pulls away. For a heartbeat, you see something in his eyes, wild, glassy, like an animal cornered by its own thoughts. Then it's gone, swallowed by shadow. You go to bed, listening to the storm breathe through the cracks, half expecting the walls to sigh back. Somewhere in the dark, a tree falls. The sound is distant, yet it shudders through you. When the world finally stills, it's as if the snow has buried all sound, all movement, all doubt. You step outside into blinding white. The air is so crisp, it crackles in your throat. The landscape looks untouched, beautiful, surreal, terrifying. For the first time, you realize that survival here isn't about fighting the land. It's about surrendering to it. You have to listen, adapt, yield. Alaska doesn't bend. You do. Ernst, though, can't yield. His need for control runs deeper than the permafrost beneath your feet. We'll build more traps, he mutters. A greenhouse, maybe a windmill. His plans pile up faster than the snow. Large Marge visits, after the thaw, bringing canned peaches and gossip. You're doing better than most, she says kindly. Heard a family down near Anchor Point, left in the night. Cabin froze solid before morning. You picture that house, empty, snow creeping in like a quiet thief. Cora smiles politely, but her hands shake. Lenny catches your eye. The question unspoken, will we make it? You don't answer. Later, when darkness falls again, you catch sight of the northern lights, unfurling above the valley. They ripple like silk, colors bleeding and folding into each other. Lenny stands in the doorway, breathless. It's like the sky's alive. You nod, mesmerized. Maybe it is. The cold nips at your face, but you can't look away. In that shimmering light, for one fleeting moment, everything feels possible again. The fear, the hunger, the silence, all of it fades beneath that endless, trembling beauty. Then you hear the door creak behind you. Ernst stands there, arms crossed, watching the lights too, but his expression isn't wonder, it's suspicion, as if even the sky might be conspiring against him. And you know then, with a quiet certainty, that winter isn't the only danger here. Something colder is already taking root inside this cabin. Something that doesn't melt with spring. By the time the snow softens and the river's grown back to life, you've learned that Alaska gives spring the way a cat gives affection, grudgingly and on its own terms. You wake one morning to find the world dripping, icicles weep down from the roof like melting daggers, and the air smells of damp moss and possibility. Cora throws open the door just to let in a draft of not-frozen oxygen. "We made it," she whispers, as if saying it too loudly might summon another blizzard out of spite. Ernst doesn't celebrate. He's already pacing the yard, measuring things, muttering about fences and sovereignty and how men have to take control or they lose it. You can practically see the tension vibrating off him, that coiled spring energy that winter couldn't freeze out. Lenny knows she's radiant. She runs to the riverbank, her boots sinking in soft mud, her hair wild in the wind. You can taste her relief in the air. Soon, life begins to thaw along with the earth. The town of Connecticut, you can call it, that emerges like a mirage from the snowmelt. A handful of cabins, a single dock, a tiny schoolhouse, and the bar that doubles as a post office, store, and rumor mill. You ride in with the Albrights on their battered truck, tires slipping in mud that could swallow small dreams whole. The sound of people feels alien after months of wind and silence. Inside the bar, the smell of fried fish, diesel, and wet coats hits you all at once. Locals nod with that cautious friendliness reserved for anyone who might either save your life or steal your tools. There's large Marge behind the counter, her voice booming above the country radio. "Look who survived the winter," she hollers. "Thought I'd be sending search dogs, not beer." The townsfolk laugh, but it's the kind of laughter that tests how thick your skin is. You smile anyway. You've learned that in places like this, humor is the currency of trust. A man named Tom Walker raises a hand in greeting. He's tall, weathered, with that calm confidence of someone who's wrestled nature long enough to stop taking it personally. "Welcome back to the land of the living," he says, offering Cora a warm grin that lasts 1 second too long. Ernst notices. His jaw tightens. You browse the shelves, canned peaches, bullets, duct tape, powdered milk. Everything costs more than it should. Large Marge slides a note across the counter. "First summers for learning, seconds for surviving. Don't mix 'em up." You tuck it into your pocket like a talisman. Outside, the locals gather around a truck bed to trade news. Someone's talking about Anchorage politics oil. Boom, this pipeline that someone else mentions how the state's population's doubled in a decade. And the lower 48 think Alaska's just a piggy bank. Historians still argue whether that oil rush saved the state's economy or just sold its soul. But standing here, you feel the tension between progress and wilderness, tugging like a live wire. You wander toward the dock where fishing boats bob lazily. The air is sharp with salt and gasoline. Lenny trails after you, eyes wide. "It's like another world," she whispers. "People actually live like this." You smile, and they think you're the strange one. That's when Matthew Walker appears, Tom's son, all lanky limbs and easy grin. He's about Lenny's age, maybe a year older, with hair that looks like it's been permanently tousled by wind. He nods shyly. "You must be the new folks." She mumbles something that could be hi or help. You chuckle quietly. Back at the bar, Ernst's voice grows sharper. He's talking about the government, taxes, the system built to keep men weak. You can feel the room stiffen. Nobody argues small towns don't waste energy on unwinnable debates, but the silence around him grows louder. Cora gently touches his sleeve. "Let's head home, baby." He jerks away. You always want to leave when people start listening. You help load the truck, pretending not to notice the way everyone avoids eye contact. Connect is the kind of town that forgets nothing and whispers faster than wind. On the ride back, Ernst fumes. They laugh at me. They think I'm some broken vet. His hands grip the steering wheel too tightly. We'll show them. We'll build something no one can take away. You nod even though you don't believe him. Cora stares straight ahead, her face a perfect mask of calm. That night, the cabin feels smaller, the air thicker. The laughter from the bar echoes in your mind like ghosts of warmth you can't reach anymore. You try to sleep, but the quiet hum of resentment buzzes just beneath the surface. The next morning, the town sends visitors, neighbors, bearing smoked salmon and cautious advice. One woman teaches Cora how to preserve berries. Another helps Lenny identify edible plants. You realize Alaska runs on barter. A jar of jam for a favor, a spare bullet for a promise. The quirky fact of the day: some Connect locals brew something they call moose milk, a mystery concoction of condensed milk, coffee, and whatever alcohol happens to be available. It tastes like regret with a hint of vanilla. Ernst drinks to mugs and declares it fine. You're unconvinced. As the days grow longer, Lenny and Matthew's friendship blossoms, quietly sharing books, skipping stones, talking about the outside world as if it's another planet. You see her eyes light up again, and for a moment, hope flickers back into the cabin, like sunlight sneaking through clouds. But every time she laughs, Ernst's expression hardens. Freedom, to him, is control. Anything else feels like betrayal. You sense something shifting inside him, the way ice cracks before it breaks. One evening, a storm rolls through thunder, low and steady, like distant artillery. Ernst sits on the porch, cigarette glowing in the dark, eyes fixed on the lightning flashing over the mountains. The world's falling apart, he murmurs. We came here to start over, but it's the same everywhere. You can't trust anyone. Cora joins him quietly. You can trust us, she says. He doesn't answer. Inside, Lenny writes in her notebook, her handwriting small but steady. You lean over her shoulder and read, maybe the wild isn't what you escape to. Maybe it's what you carry inside. And somehow, that single line feels truer than anything Ernst ever said. As the rain drums on the roof, you realize Connect is watching you, now watching to see if you'll stay, if you'll break, or if the great alone will swallow you whole like it has so many before. Summer stretches long and golden, and for the first time in months you feel warmth seep through your bones instead of just settling like a rumor. The snow shrinks back into the mountains. Rivers swell with melted promise, and the world hums again. You wake to birdsong instead of silence, to soft air that smells like pine sap and thawed earth. You can almost believe in peace here almost. Lenny spends her days helping Cora plant a garden, her nails permanently stained with soil. You join her, listening to the rhythm of spades slicing dirt, the distant call of loons echoing across the valley. It feels alive again, she says, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. You smile. So do you. Ernst, meanwhile, builds traps and fences as if he's fortifying a fortress instead of a home. His paranoia blooms in sync with the fireweed outside. He's convinced outsiders will come to take their land, that the government will find a way to strip their freedom. You've learned to nod when he rants, to stay still when the silence after his words stretches too long. But tonight isn't about him. Tonight is about something softer, something like hope. It starts when Matthew Walker shows up with a grin and a backpack full of sandwiches. Dad says you should see the ridge, he tells Lenny. There's wildflowers all over, like a painting. Cora hesitates before answering, glancing toward the cabin. Be back before dark, she says quietly. And just like that, you're off hiking through a forest so alive it practically sings. The path winds upward through alder and birch, each step carrying the faint perfume of damp moss and sun-warmed bark. Matthew moves easily, his laughter bright against the hush. My dad says the land doesn't belong to anyone, he says. We just borrow it. Lenny nods, her eyes shining. My dad says the land's ours if we're strong enough to keep it. Guess one of them's wrong, Matthew says lightly. Or both. You reach the ridge just as the sun begins to dip. The sky stretches, endless, pink bleeding into violet, clouds glowing like embers. Below, the valley shimmers with wild lupin, purple and blue, swaying like an ocean of color. The wind rushes past, carrying 1,000 scents sweet, sharp, ancient. For a moment, the world feels perfect. You can see forever, and forever feels possible. Lenny laughs, the sound soft and disbelieving. It's too beautiful, she says. It doesn't feel real. Maybe it's not supposed to, Matthew replies. Maybe that's the point. You lie back in the grass, watching the first stars wink through. The northern summer light never fully fades. It just softens into a blue that feels like twilight's secret. The quirky fact of the night. Some Alaskan locals claim that during the longest days, time itself gets strange. People forget to sleep. Clocks seem off. Moods shift. Scientists call it circadian disruption. You call it magic with side effects. Lenny traces constellations with her finger. Do you ever think about leaving? She asks. Matthew shrugs. Sometimes, but my dad says the world out there is too loud. Here, you can hear yourself think. She's quiet for a while, and you know she's imagining both possibilities, the chaos she left behind and the quiet that might never end. When you finally head back, the trail glows faintly in the near dark. You can hear the river below, laughing at how small you all are. At the cabin, Ernst's already waiting, his face shadowed by lamplight. Where were you? His voice isn't loud, but it cuts sharp. Hiking, Lenny says, breathless. I told Mom. He steps closer. You think I don't notice when you disappear. You think people around here can be trusted. Cora moves between them. She was safe, Ernst. Let her breathe. His eyes flash. Safe. No one's safe. Not out here. Not anywhere. He storms outside, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the window panes. The silence that follows hums like a bruise. You sit with Cora and Lenny, the lamp flickering weakly. He's just scared, Cora murmurs. He loves us too much. Her voice trembles, and you can tell even she doesn't believe it anymore. Later that night, you find Lenny outside again, sitting on the steps, staring at the stars. Do you think people can change? She asks quietly. You don't answer right away. Instead, you listen to the forest breathing soft, steady, eternal. Maybe, you finally say, but sometimes they just become more of who they already were. She nods, eyes glistening. Then I'll just have to be more too. The next few weeks blur into the rhythm of summer fishing, building, mending. The community pulls together. Neighbors trade smoked salmon for help with roofs. Kids race boats down the river. Even Ernst seems calmer for a while, content in the simple tasks of work. You almost start to believe the worst has passed. But cracks have a way of spreading beneath the surface, unseen, until the day they split everything apart. One evening, While helping large Marge fix a fence, you overhear whispers, rumors about a nearby homestead where a family disappeared. Some say they moved south. Others say the winter took them. Out here, Marge mutters, tightening a nail. The line between freedom and folly's thinner than you think. You remember those words when you return home to find Ernst arguing with Cora about supplies, about how much food she's traded away, about how he's the only one thinking ahead. His voice rises, harsh and ragged. Lenny stands frozen in the doorway, fists clenched. "Stop," she whispers. "Please." He turns toward her eyes, wild and for one heartbeat. The air goes still. Then Cora steps forward, voice soft but steady. "It's late, Ernst. Let's sit." The tension snaps, but it leaves a tremor behind. That night, you lie awake listening to the floorboards creak under his pacing. Outside, the sky ripples again with the northern light screen, pink, flickering like a heartbeat. Lenny watches from her bed, eyes wide. "They look like fire," she says. You nod. Fire can warm or burn. Depends how close you get. And somewhere out there, beneath the shimmering sky, you sense that balance tipping beauty, turning toward danger, love stretching toward breaking. You wake one morning to the smell of smoke, not the good kind that means breakfast, but the acrid, sharp kind that means something's gone wrong. For one wild heartbeat, you think the cabin's burning. You rush outside barefoot, the ground cold and damp beneath your feet. But it's only Ernst again, burning brush down by the river, shirtless, his back slick with sweat despite the chill in the air. He's muttering to himself, words lost under the crackle of fire. Can't let it spread. Can't let anyone get close. His movements are jerky, too fast, as if he's fighting something invisible. Cora stands on the porch, arms folded tight across her chest, lips pressed thin. She doesn't call out to him. You realize she's learned when silence is safer than sound. You feel the change in him like a drop in pressure before a storm. The summer sun hasn't softened him. It's sharpened his edges. He starts talking about outsiders again, about how Tom Walker and his son are spying, about how the government's using the mail to track homesteaders. You've heard this before, but the words sound different, now thicker, meaner, infected. That evening, Cora suggests a walk to the lake. You go with her and Lenny, the light gold and slanted through the trees. He's getting worse, Cora admits quietly. The nightmares are back. He doesn't sleep. Some nights, he just stands by the window, staring out like he's waiting for someone. You remember the statistics. How many Vietnam veterans came home carrying ghosts they couldn't put down? Historians still argue whether it was neglect, trauma, or the culture's refusal to understand that turned so many of them inward. You don't need a debate, though. You're watching the answer unravel right in front of you. You sit by the water as Lenny skips stones. "Do you think he'll get better?" she asks. Cora hesitates. "He has to." Then, more softly, "We have to make sure he does." The wind picks up, carrying the faint scent of wood smoke and fear. Days slide into each other. Ernst grows quieter in daylight, more volatile at night. He builds fences that seem to trap more than protect. He starts locking the doors. You help stack firewood one afternoon, and he says, "It's us against them now." You ask who them is. He doesn't answer. That night, you dream of walls closing in, not wooden ones, but invisible ones, made of his voice, his suspicion, his silence. And still, life tries to continue. Matthew visits, sometimes bringing fish or books. You can see how carefully he looks at Lenny, no gentle, respectful, terrified of the line between friendship and danger. They sit by the river, reading side by side, and you almost forget the tension waiting back home. One evening, he tells a story about Denali, how mountaineers used to climb it before GPS, just map, compass, and luck. Some made it, he says, but most turned back. You can't fight a mountain. You just decide how much of it you can live with. You think of Ernst, you think of Cora, you think maybe love works the same way. The quirky tidbit of the night in the late 1970s. A group of Alaskan homesteaders actually formed a freedom cooperative where they bartered goods and promised mutual protection from the government. They even printed fake IDs for themselves, complete with made-up state seals. Their motto, live free, freeze hard. You suspect Ernst would have loved it. By late August, the light begins to shift, again less golden, more brittle. The leaves blush early, as if they know what's coming. Ernst becomes obsessed with preparing for winter, piling supplies, rationing food, muttering that no one's helping. Cora keeps pace, smiling when she has to, holding her breath the rest of the time. You notice Lenny has grown quieter, too. She's learned how to read the air the way you read a weather vane. One night she whispers, when he's good, he's so good. But when he's not, she trails off. You finish for her. When he's not, it's like he disappears. The blow-up comes without warning. It's a crisp September night. Aurora's ghosting faintly across the sky. Tom Walker stops by with extra fuel, a neighborly gesture. Heard you were running low, he says. Ernst bristles immediately. We don't need charity. Tom just smiles. It's not charity, friend. It's what neighbors do. But that word friend snaps something in Ernst. He steps closer, voice low and dangerous. You think I don't see it? The way you look at my wife, the way your boy follows my daughter. Tom's expression shifts from patient to wary. You've got it wrong. Ernst lunges before anyone can speak again. You hear Cora scream his name, see the flash of his arm as he shoves Tom backward into the dirt. It's over quickly, neighbors pulling them apart, curses swallowed by the cold night air, but the damage is done. Something invisible breaks that can't be mended with apologies. Tom leaves without another word. Ernst stands in the doorway, chest heaving, eyes glassy. They're all against us, he says. We'll see who lasts through winter. Later, Cora presses a wet cloth to his bruised knuckles. He doesn't thank her. He just stares past her shoulder, into the dark. You lie awake, listening to the wind, to the groan of logs shifting in the cold. You wonder if Alaska breeds this madness or just strips away everything that hides it. Lenny sneaks out before dawn to meet Matthew one last time. You follow at a distance, letting the forest swallow your footsteps. They sit near the river, not speaking much. She tells him, we can't see each other anymore. He'll kill you. Matthew doesn't argue. He just takes her hand and presses something small into a tated smooth stone, carved with a simple heart. Then keep this. It's proof something good happened here. When she gets home, Ernst is waiting. He doesn't ask where she's been. He just looks at her hand, closed tight around the stone, and something dangerous flickers behind his eyes. You can feel it coming now, the collapse, the reckoning, the long winter that won't be made of snow this time. Historians still argue whether the frontier made people resilient or reckless, whether isolation bred independence or illusion. But tonight, as the first frost settles on the windows, you start to think those aren't opposites. Maybe they're the same thing, wearing different coats. And as you close your eyes, you can almost hear Alaska whisper, amused and ancient. You wanted freedom. Let's see what it costs. The first snow arrives, like a held breath, finally released. One morning you wake, and everything is quiet. No drip of water, no crunch of mud, just the muffled stillness of white. The air smells like cold metal, and when you step outside, your breath becomes visible truth. The mountains have drawn closer, their edges sharp and impossible. For a moment, it's beautiful and real. Even then you notice the smoke curling from your chimney. Too thin, too fast, the wood piles already shrinking. You realize this isn't a painting, it's a test. Ernst thrives in this season, at least at first. The cold gives him purpose. He chops wood, hauls water, patches walls. You almost admire his energy, if not for the hard glint in his eyes when he looks toward town. They'll come asking for help soon, he mutters. We'll see who's prepared. Cora nods, though you can tell she's just buying peace with silence. You help Lenny hang blankets over windows, stuff rags under the doorframes, anything to keep the wind from sneaking in. It's like living in a snow globe, she says, watching flakes swirl beyond the glass. You grin. Yeah. Someone keeps shaking. It's funny until it isn't. Weeks pass. The days shrink until you measure time by the color of the sky. Gray, darker gray, nearly black. The radio signal fades. Mail stops coming. The world contracts to your cabin, your fire, your fear. The quirky tidbit of the night. Early Alaskan settlers used to hang mirrors outside their windows during winter to reflect scarce sunlight inside. Some swore it lifted their spirits. Others said it summoned ghosts. You wish you had a mirror like that, now, though maybe not the ghosts. One night, the wind howls so fiercely it feels alive. The whole cabin shakes, and Ernst curses under his breath. Storm's coming, he says, and you can hear both dread and excitement in it. The next day, he nails the shutters closed. When you finally step outside, it's like walking into another planet's no waist deep, sky low and bruised. You help dig paths, your fingers going numb through your gloves. Ernst works beside you, muttering about how the walkers won't last. Then, days later, the storm breaks, the air clears, impossibly blue, and in that fragile stillness, you hear something else, laughter, faint but real. Lenny looks up. That's from the walker's place. Ernst's jaw tightens. They'll draw attention, making noise like that. Cora tries to defuse him. Maybe they're just celebrating being alive. Or showing off, he growls. We'll see who's laughing in March. The isolation starts to warp time. You lose track of days. The fire burns lower. The nights stretch longer. Sometimes, Ernst sits by the window with his rifle across his lap, watching the tree line. You don't ask what he's waiting for. Historians still argue whether isolation breeds insanity or simply unmasks it. You suspect the answer depends on who you're snowed in with. Lenny starts reading aloud in the evening's old paperbacks, salvaged from town. Her voice is soft, rhythmic, the words curling through the air like smoke. For a while, you all pretend it's normal. A family gathered around the fire, warmth and light and safety. But every time the wind rattles the walls, Ernst flinches. They're testing us, he says once. You don't know who they is anymore. One morning, Cora finds a bullet hole in the window. Frames, small, precise, terrifying. It's just the wood splitting, Ernst insists. But his eyes dart to the forest. They're watching. You start keeping watch. Not for outsiders, but for him. Then, one night, it happens. The argument begins over nothing, a misplaced jar of coffee. Cora says she saw it last. Ernst accuses her of trading it away. His voice rises, harsh and jagged. You think I don't know what you're doing? You think I can't see? She tries to calm him, but he's beyond hearing. The coffee spills dark against the pale floorboards. Lenny steps between them. Dad, stop. The slap lands before you can even move. A sound so sharp it cracks the air itself. Silence follows, thick and awful. Cora's hand flies to her cheek. Lenny stands frozen, eyes wide. Ernst stares at his hand as if it doesn't belong to him. Then he turns, walks outside into the snow, and disappears into the trees. Cora sinks to her knees. He didn't mean it, she whispers, but the words sound paper-thin. You kneel beside her, but what can you say? That love excuses pain, that fear forgives it. The wind moans outside, like an answer no one wants to hear. That night, Lenny crawls into your sleeping bag, silent tears wetting your shoulder. We can't stay, she whispers. We have to go. You don't argue, you just hold her, listening to the house creak, to the snow sliding off the roof in heavy sighs. Ernst returns the next morning, calm again, smiling like nothing happened. He apologizes, soft voice, downcast eyes. I don't know what came over me. Cora forgives him instantly, as she always does, but something in Lenny doesn't bend this time. It hardens. The days blur on. The snow deepens. You run low on kerosene. You burn scraps of wood, books, anything that'll keep the cold back. Every sound outside feels amplified. The snap of branches, the distant howl of wolves. Sometimes you think you hear footsteps circling the house, but when you look, there's only the endless white. The quirky fringe tale for the night. Some bush pilots swear they've seen ghost lights flickering over frozen lakes, like lanterns moving just out of reach. Scientists say it's methane ignition. Old-timers say it's lost travelers, doomed to wander until someone remembers their names. You wonder which version's lonelier. When spring finally peeks through again, it's not triumphant. The thaw feels uncertain, reluctant. You look at the melting snow, at the muddy ruts, and realize something essential has frozen over inside this family. Cora hums softly as she plants early seeds, pretending everything's fine. Ernst builds another fence. Lenny stands by the river, staring at the gray water rushing free again. She doesn't smile. Freedom, it turns out, can look an awful lot like captivity when the door to your cage is disguised as wilderness. Spring in Alaska doesn't really arrive, sneaks in, half ashamed, melting edges of snow, one soggy patch at a time. The world smells like thaw and rot, like everything old and stubborn, trying to be born again. You watch the river swell, dark and hungry, carrying chunks of ice like broken mirrors. Inside the cabin, the air feels thicker somehow. The silence between Cora and Ernst has weight now, pressing on every word that dares to exist. He's quieter than before, but quieter doesn't mean calmer. It means coiled. It means waiting. Lenny moves carefully, speaking softly, as though sound itself might set him off. But she's different, now taller, more certain, her eyes sharper. There's a new kind of strength in her that even she doesn't recognize yet. She spends hours alone by the water, sketching, writing, planning. You can almost hear her thoughts when she looks at the horizon, anywhere but here. One morning, she finds a note tucked inside a jar of sugar. It's from Matthew. Meet me by the bend, noon. You try to talk her out of it. She shakes her head. If he's brave enough to reach out, I can be brave enough to answer. So you follow her, steps muffled in the damp moss. The forest hums with new life-sprouting ferns, darting ptarmigans, distant woodpeckers, hammering like tiny engines. When Matthew appears, you see the relief in his face, the exhaustion. He looks older than his years. Like winter left a mark on him that sun can't erase. "I heard what happened," he says softly. "Are you okay?" Lenny shrugs, though her eyes betray her. "We survived." He takes her hand. "You shouldn't have to just survive." They talk for hours about everything and nothing: books, college, the idea of escape. He tells her about Anchorage, about a world with grocery stores and movie theaters, about light that lasts all night for good reasons. "You could go," he says. "You're smart enough to make it anywhere, and leave Mom." He hesitates. "You can't save someone who won't walk with you." It's the kind of truth that sounds cruel until it's all that's left. When she returns home, Ernst's mood is already boiling. "Where were you?" he demands. She lies, fishing. He stares too long before nodding, the corner of his mouth twitching. "Don't wander too far. People disappear out here." You can almost hear the unspoken, and sometimes I help them. That night, Cora comes to Lenny's room. "He's planning something," she whispers. "He talks in his sleep about leaving, about cutting everyone off. He wants to move us deeper, build another cabin miles from here." "Mom, we can't," Lenny says. "We'll die out there." Cora's voice cracks. "Then we'll run before he makes us." You realize they've reached the point every trapped bird reaches the moment it stops fearing the fall more than the cage. The next few days are tense with false calm. Ernst chops wood, fixes traps, whistles. Tunelessly, Cora packs quietly food, clothes, Lenny's notebooks, all hidden under floorboards. The plan is simple: leave before dawn, take the walker's skiff downriver, reach town before he notices. But the wilderness loves irony. The night before they leave, Ernst returns early from checking snares and finds the floorboard slightly ajar. When he lifts it and sees what's inside: bags, clothes, the small stash of cash, something in him snaps so audibly the world seems to flinch. "You were going to leave me," he says. The words aren't a question, they're an accusation. Cora tries to soothe him. "We were scared, that's all. We just needed air." His face hardens. "You think you can live without me? You wouldn't last a week." Then his voice drops to a whisper that's somehow worse than shouting. "If you go, I'll make sure no one ever finds you." The world shrinks again, smaller than a cabin, smaller than a heartbeat. Lenny grabs her mother's arm. "Run." They bolt out the back door, into the cold rain, feet pounding through the mud. Ernst's footsteps follow, heavy, relentless. You crash through trees, branches whipping your face, your lungs screaming for air. Somewhere behind you, his voice cuts through the dark. "You can't hide from me." You reach the riverbank, breathless. The current is wild, swollen with meltwater, the skiff's half submerged, rope tangled around the post. Cora fumbles with it, hands shaking. Lenny pushes, but the current fights back, then shouts footsteps. He's close, too close. In one impossible second, everything converges: the storm, the fear, the decision. Cora turns to Lenny. "Go. You go, now. I'm not leaving you. Go." You hear the shot before you see the flash. One sharp crack that splits the rain, echoing through the valley. Lenny screams, dives toward her mother, and the world tilts. Ernst stands a few paces away, gun shaking in his hands, eyes wide with shock. "I didn't mean," he starts, but his voice dissolves into the rain. Lenny's arms tighten around Cora, whose breathing is shallow, uneven. "It's okay," Cora whispers. "It's okay, baby. Keep going." "It's not okay," You both know it. Then, from somewhere beyond the trees, headlights, a truck engine, Tom Walker's voice calling through the storm, Lenny Cora, Ernst bolts toward the forest, vanishing into the dark. You never see him again, not that night, not in any way that matters. Tom reaches you, pulling Lenny and Cora into his arms, shouting for help. You're barely aware of the motion, the rush to the truck, the drive, the blur of lights. You only know the smell of gunpowder lingers long after the rain washes everything else away. The quirky fact tonight, statistically, Alaska in the 1970s had the highest rate of missing person reports per capita in the United States, some real, many lost to wilderness or willful disappearance. Locals called it the state's unofficial sport. You wonder if Ernst simply became one of those unclaimed statistics, swallowed by the land he claimed to love. Historians still argue whether frontier life kills people or just reveals what they were willing to kill for. As the rain fades and sirens replace the wind, you suspect both can be true. Cora clings to Lenny's hand, her voice faint. Promise me. Don't let this place take you. You hold that promise close, like fire in a world still half frozen. Hospitals smell like bleach and second chances, and you never realized how loud they are until you've lived through too much silence. Machines beep like impatient metronomes. Shoes squeak on linoleum. The air conditioning hums an endless white noise that almost drowns out thought. Almost. Cora lies pale beneath thin sheets, the kind that rustle like paper. Her hair is still damp, her skin translucent, but her hand is warm when Lenny takes it. "Mom," she whispers, voice raw. "You're safe. We're safe." Cora smiles weakly. Are we? The truth is complicated. Ernst gone vanished into the wild that made him. The troopers are searching, but you know Alaska doesn't give back what it takes. Tom Walker filed the report, gave his statement, and stayed by the hospital door like a sentinel. He looks older, too, grief carved into his features, hope trying to survive underneath it. Outside, spring tries again, half-hearted sunlight, gray clouds drifting over the mountains like exhausted soldiers. You stand at the window, staring out. Freedom feels strange when it finally arrives, too bright, too fragile. The doctors say Cora's going to recover, though she carries scars inside and out. She's lucky, one nurse murmurs. You wonder what that word means in Alaska. A week passes, then another. Lenny barely leaves her mother's side. Tom and Matthew bring food, clean clothes, quiet kindness. One afternoon, Matthew sits beside her, handing her a cup of coffee that tastes like the first warm thing in months. "You did what you had to," he says gently. She looks down. "I did what I was forced to." He doesn't correct her. The quirky tidbit of the day. Some small Alaskan towns still use the bush telegraph, a rumor network faster than radio, powered entirely by gossip and snowmobiles. You see it in action now. By the time Cora's awake, everyone within 50 miles knows the story. Except it keeps changing. Some say Ernst fell into the river. Others say he's still out there, living off the grid. Historians still argue whether legends start from fact or from the human need to make fear more interesting. Eventually, Cora's released. Tom insists they stay at his place until they can figure out the next step. It's bigger, warmer, filled with light and the smell of cedar. Lenny walks through it like someone seeing color for the first time. There are books on every shelf, photographs of mountains and old plains, music softly playing from a worn-out record player. You don't realize what peace sounds like until you hear it, she murmurs. Tom nods. Sometimes it sounds like nothing at all. Cora starts to heal, not just physically, but in small, invisible ways. She helps cook, she laughs at things again, though her laughter is cautious, as if afraid it'll break. Some mornings, she stands outside, wrapped in a blanket, staring toward the tree line, where the fog clings like memory. You know she's wondering whether he's still out there. Then there's Matthew. He and Lenny fall back into easy rhythm, sketching by the river, fixing engines, pretending time hasn't warped them, but it has. Everything's sharper now, more real. One evening he says, "You ever think about college?" She shrugs. "Mom always said the world out there eats girls like me. Maybe it's time to bite back," he says, with a grin. You smile because you can see it too, the flicker of a life not ruled by fear. Still, shadows linger. Sometimes at night, the dogs bark for no reason. Sometimes, Tom finds boot prints near the edge of the property, faded, partial, but too large to ignore. "Could be hunters," he says, though you can hear the hesitation in his voice. Cora grows restless after that. She double-checks locks, starts keeping a knife by her bed. "He's gone," Tom tells her. "Even if he's alive, he won't come back here." Cora doesn't answer. The law drags its feet. Ernst Albright becomes another ghost story. The case fades into paperwork, then into rumor. The world moves on, but you can't. Not completely. Lenny starts writing again, long into the night. You catch glimpses of Sio's letters, bits of something half story, half memory. "If I can name it," she says, "I can survive it." You want to believe her. One afternoon, months later, Tom takes you both to Anchorage. The drive feels surreal. Roads, cars, stores, people everywhere. Civilization looks almost alien after so long in the wild. You see reflections of yourselves in every window, smaller, wary, alive. They visit a bookstore. Lenny runs her hand along the spines like she's greeting old friends. "This is what I missed most," she says softly. "Stories that don't end in storms." Tom smiles. "The best ones always start with them, though." Back at the lodge that night, Cora sits by the fire, a blanket over her knees. She looks older now, but lighter, somehow like she's set down a weight she'd carried too long. "I used to think love could fix anyone," she says quietly. "Now I think it just gives you reasons to try, and sometimes that's enough." The room hums with quiet agreement. Still, when the wind howls through the trees, you see her flinch. When the radio cracks with static, you see Lenny look up sharply. Some things, you realize, never fully leave you. They just learn to whisper instead of shout. Historians still argue whether people like the Albrights were brave or broken, whether pioneers of solitude or casualties of their own myth. But sitting here now, you know the truth's more complicated. They were both. Lenny's the bridge between those two worlds, the wilderness and what comes after. You can see it in her sketches, the way she captures light reflecting off water, or a mountain rising through fog. She's documenting survival, but she's also reclaiming beauty. "Maybe someday," she says, "I'll write it all down, not for pity, just so someone knows we were here." You nod, because you know she will. And when she does, the story won't be about Ernst. It'll be about her mother's resilience, her own courage, and the way even the coldest place can't keep love buried forever. Outside, dusk melts into a blue so deep it feels endless. The first stars appear, shy and bright. You breathe out, tasting freedom for real this time, not the kind someone gives you, but the kind you earn by surviving what should have ended you. For the first time in a long time, You think maybe you'll sleep through the night. Summer, again the kind of summer that makes you forget winter ever existed. The sky is a clean, impossible blue, and the days stretch so long they almost feel eternal. You wake to sunlight already spilling through the window. Two birds arguing cheerfully outside, to the sound of Cora humming in the kitchen while coffee brews. You'd think, after everything, the quiet would feel fragile, but it doesn't not anymore. It feels earned, solid, like the land itself has decided to forgive you a little. Lenny has finished high school now. She's 18, restless, her notebooks full of sketches and stories. She's planning to leave for college in the Fall University of Alaska, Anchorage, close enough to the mountains to still smell the pine, far enough from the past to breathe without looking over her shoulder. Cora tries not to show her worry. You'll call every week, she asks, pretending it's casual. Lenny smiles. Every other day. Tom and Matthew help load the truck on moving day. The boxes are few books, a sleeping bag, a battered typewriter rescued from a thrift store. It's not much, Lenny says. Tom shakes his head. It's everything that matters. You feel a tug in your chest, something between pride and ache. The quirky fact of the day: Alaska actually has more female bush pilots per capita than anywhere else in the U.S. Some folks say it's because isolation breeds independence. Others claim it's because when the world gives you no roads, you learn to make your own sky. You figure that fits Lenny perfectly. That evening, before she leaves, the four of you sit around a bonfire by the river. The flames paint everyone in gold, the smoke curling up into a sky already blushing toward midnight. Cora's wrapped in a shawl, her face soft with firelight. You know, she says, I used to think we came here to find freedom. Turns out we came to learn what it costs. Tom nods slowly. And whether we could still want it after paying. Lenny pokes the fire with a stick, sparks flying like tiny stars. I still want it, she says, but I want it my way. You smile, because that's exactly the point. Later, when the fire's low and the mosquitoes mercifully retreat, you walk down to the river. The water glows faintly in the twilight, carrying reflections of everything that's changed. You remember the first time you stood here cold, terrified, convinced you wouldn't last the week, and now look at you, scarred, sure, but still standing, still breathing, still dreaming. Historians still argue whether Alaska makes people stronger or simply wilder. You suspect the answer depends on who tells the story. For you, it's both strength forged through wilderness, wildness tamed by love. The next morning, the truck rumbles down the dirt road. Cora waves until it's a speck, then nothing. When she turns back toward the cabin, you can see both grief and peace in her face, the strange coexistence that comes from letting go of what nearly destroyed you. Days stretch into weeks again. Letters arrive from Anchorage Lenny describing city noise, neon lights, and the dizzy miracle of grocery stores open past 6. She writes about professors who love stories, about new friends who think growing up off-grid sounds romantic instead of tragic. She's found a small apartment with a window that faces west, so she can still watch the sunset like she did in Connect. You read those letters aloud by the fire sometimes. Cora listens with her eyes half closed, smiling at the sound of her daughter's voice captured in ink. She's gonna be okay, she whispers. You nod. Better than okay. Then, one crisp September morning, you get a call. It's Lenny, her voice bright and full of something you haven't heard in years, joy. Mom, she says, they're publishing my essay. The The one about Alaska, about us. Cora laughs and cries at once, a sound equal parts wonder and disbelief. Oh, baby, you did it. You hang up, and for a moment the cabin feels larger, lighter. You realize the story that started in fear has ended in creation. The wilderness tried to break her, but it only taught her how to write stronger sentences. Tom stops by that evening with a bottle of wine, the fancy kind, he says, though the label's peeling. You sit together on the porch, the three of you, watching the aurora shimmer faintly, even this early in the season. Cora leans her head on his shoulder. We lost so much, she murmurs. Tom takes her hand. Yeah, but look what we kept. The sky ripples green and pink, soft and slow, like it's breathing with you. For once, you don't feel small beneath it. You feel part of it. And you think maybe that's what survival really means. Not escaping the dark, but learning how to light your own way through it. The quirky fringe tidbit for tonight. Some Alaskans believe the northern lights are spirits' dancing ancestors, celebrating the lives of those who endured. Scientists, of course, say it's solar wind colliding with magnetized particles. But maybe both are true. Maybe survival itself is just energy that refuses to stop glowing. Cora smiles up at the sky, voice barely above a whisper. We made it. You exhale, letting the night fill your lungs. For once, it doesn't sting. The fire has burned low now, down to a soft bed of embers, glowing like memories that refuse to fade. The air outside is crisp and quiet, and the stars have taken over the work of illumination. You listen to the hush between breaths, to the river's distant murmur, to the faint hum of the world continuing. The story's over, but it doesn't really end, does it? It lingers in the spaces we carry forward, in the sound of wind through spruce trees, in the steady pulse of a heart that refused to stop. You picture Lenny years from now, reading her words to a crowded room, her voice steady, her smile small but certain. You picture Cora in that same cabin, windows open, letting the night come in without fear. You realize you've traveled through their winters and back again, not just across the Alaskan wilderness, but across what it means to be human, to love, to hurt, to survive anyway. So now, let yourself drift. Imagine the fire dimming further, the world settling into soft rhythm. The mountains hold their breath, the river hums low, the stars stretch out like a quilt overhead. You're safe here. You've done enough. You are enough. Let the story close around you like a blanket, warm and steady, as the night deepens and your thoughts grow lighter. Breathe in once more cold air, clean and re-land. Let it out slowly. Sleep well, traveler. You've earned your rest. Sweet dreams.